To start off with today, I thought I'll just, have like a quick AMA with all of you about why is it that building a fintech career seems hard for some people. From the outside, it looks like it's a lot of things. It's not. So really want to kind of break some of those myths down about fintech careers and why or why people assume it's hard to break into fintech. And if you guys want to come up on stage, please feel free to just raise your hands and I'll bring you up on stage. I am facing some bit of an internet issue, so it may take a little bit of time in accepting that request. But yes, so to get started with, I'll probably share a little bit about my story of how I happened to come into fintech, um, which is really by chance. I didn't really do anything special to get into fintech and to become a part of this great industry. I completed my BTech way back in 2012, and one of the things I was very clear about back then was that I want to make sure that I go into a product company and not a services based company. That was the only clarity I ever had in my mind. Fortunately or unfortunately for me, the few companies that were coming to campus at that point in time were all in the financial services domain. So we had eBay, PayPal. Back then, they were the same company. We had Temenos, which is where I joined, and we had a bunch of other companies as well, which were all doing financial services at that point in time. And I was a computer science engineering grad uh, who had done a paper in financial accounting, but found it incredibly boring. Like I can't begin to tell you how boring I found it. But yes, as fate would have it, the company that I would end up going to would happen to be one that was building the entire core banking stack for most of the major banks in the world. So going from someone who had zero clue about, okay, I had some clue about financial technology, to then actually understanding the nuts and bolts of it, it's been an incredible journey. So I did that. I was a developer slash analyst. Product as a function at that point in time did not really exist or had not yet picked up. So product was kind of managed by the developers, the analysts, and the project managers between all of us. Then I decided that, this is interesting. I probably need to learn a lot more about this. So I decided to do an MBA. Got lucky that I got into MDI Gurgaon because there again, the number of fintech companies that were coming up on campus was enormous. Like I think every fourth company was a fintech company at that point in time. This was again in 2016, 2017. And I got very lucky because my internship happened to be back in 2017 in the UPI team at Axis Bank. And as you guys would remember, UPI at that point in time was not really the household name that it is today. So there from like, and I actually saw it being built out from the grassroots, like how we used to go out and talk to customers who had initiated transactions and not completed it to figure out why didn't you complete it. And we'd get feedback, like a lot of them telling us, oh, we assumed that we did. Are you telling me it's not? So the fact that, we had to go through that entire as a product, that entire learning cycle, it was a crazy experience for me. And one of the things that I realized at that point in time was that for me personally, I had to become a rock star with data if I wanted to build a career in fintech. I mean, by then I was pretty much convinced I wanted to build a career in fintech. So that's like that discovery process we'll probably talk about at a later point in time. So that's when I decided that what I have to become if I want to become a fintech person. Forget a product person, but as a fintech person, I'll have to be a rock star with data. So that's what I started doing. I started building out my data acumen. I started figuring out both sides of the equation, basically the financial data side of it. How is money being made? How does the money flow? Versus the product data side of it. How are the users interacting with the product? What features are they most comfortable with? Which of our funnels are broken like crazy and needs immediate fixing? So that entire thing, and then figuring out from building on top of that to figuring out and predicting what is it that the customers would next want. So that's how my journey has been. I've been very fortunate to have built like a bunch of very great products. UPI was one of them, which now is like a household name in India. Account aggregator was another one, which has now reached like a 15 million user base, and it makes me so proud to see some of these things being picked up in a very, very great way. And now I'm out building like an entirely, so all UPI as well as account aggregator were both on the digital public infrastructure side of things. And now I'm building out a completely B2C sort of a fintech product, Lakshmi or LXME, which is about empowering and making women's financial life a lot easier, improving women's financial relationship. So that's like a completely different sort of a journey that I've been a part. I'm now on, and for me, if I look back, I think one of the biggest challenges or one of the things that kind of really scared me in the initial days of my career was the fact that I did not understand financial products. And when you're building such new age products, I think not having an understanding of the back end of the financial product, it can be pretty intimidating. You don't really know how your product is supposed to interact with your consumers, how it's supposed to interact with other tech stacks from other partnering financial institutions that's there. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges for me personally, at least. But it's very easy to overcome that. And the reason is that the Indian regulators especially have done like a fabulous job of making sure that there are clear documentation of what each financial product is supposed to do. And I keep saying this to anyone who would bother to listen to me. When it comes to financial services or fintech in India, there is literally nothing like a gray area that you can exploit. There is the black and white that RBI, if you are in the banking payments lending space, there is the black and white that RBI has mentioned that you have to kind of cater to. Or any other segment. If it's the money market and the capital markets, it's what SEBI has said. While you can collaborate with these regulators, there's no way that you can actually try acting smart and kind of go around and build something that's not really how do I say, not very compliant. And we're seeing this play out today, right? Like that's happening to a lot of fintechs. Unfortunately, today you have GM Financials, DMI, Paytm, even Visa and MasterCard were, by the way, not exempt from RBI scrutiny. So there literally is no gray area when it comes to fintech at all. But another reason why I think fintech becomes a little daunting is that if you look at any of the JDs that are out there of fintech companies that are hiring, what's the one thing that they all want? Understanding of deep understanding, rather. So I went through like about 10 different JDs from great fintech companies, but they want like a deep understanding of the sector in which they are. And from the outside, while I run my newsletter and all of that and do a fair bit of research on all of those, it's very difficult to really understand from the outside what is it that the product does. While there are companies that are today trying to change that, like for example, if you want to learn about, say, the payment rails, what, like, of course, UPI and NPCI have done a fabulous job of documenting how UPI works and all of that, and the entire transaction and the settlement flow that happens at the back end. But if you want to understand how is it that at a tech level, how does it work? I think Setu as a company has been doing such an amazing job of documenting all of this and providing those a full on API documentation, API playground for us to figure out. It's fabulous. And a lot of fintechs are realizing that these kind of API playgrounds or anything, even if it's a Swagger file, it kind of helps in building that trust with your consumers. And so this is, I think, a great area for outsiders to also start learning about what's happening in the fintech space. So that's, I think, another great way that you can overcome that knowledge barrier that kind of exists in fintech. I've just named Setu as one, but if you want to look at how payments across the world works, Stripe is another great example. They also provide fabulous documentation that's, it tells you end to end what is happening and what exactly is like, and they give it to you stage wise, by the way. They also have like a very good user journey flow that happens on that side. So that's, I would start with the leaders that are there in the fintech space and then figure out what is it or how is it that they're going about building. And most of these leaders, they're very secure about the product that they're building. So they're more than happy to kind of share the nitty gritties of it in terms of these API documents to others to build upon that. So I think that is one great place that most of us can start off with. Another area that so this was actually something that it hit me when I'd recently gone to IIT Madras for a small talk that I was given over there on fintech product management. And one of the participants came up to me and said that I don't have a technical background. I'm doing my MBA at IIT Madras, and I've never really had any technical background. So what should I do? But I know I want to be in the fintech space. It's a very exciting space. I see new innovations happening every day over there. So what should I do? So after like a lot of back and forth brainstorming that we were trying to figure out where his skills would kind of fit in, I realized that for such people who are completely how do I put this in a not so offensive way, but people who are completely stumped by technology, the best way for them to get started is through a CSM sort of a role. Customer success in fintech is picking up in a massive way, and I cannot even begin to tell you, simply because these products are a little complicated. You need someone to kind of handhold the customer and tell them this is how you use the product, this is how you integrate with the product, this is how the product is making sense for you, this is how the product is making your life easier. So if you are someone who's, when you see tech, you take like a step back. I think taking up something like a CSM role is a fabulous idea. And companies are hiring a lot of CSMs nowadays. Like the number of openings that I see on CSM roles, it's been growing like crazy, especially on the B2B fintech company side of things. For example, my really good friend and someone I very much look up to on a daily basis, Aishwarya Jaishankar. She also has a bunch of openings in the entire CSM side of her product. And the CSMs who come out of Aishwarya's company, like when you interact with them, they know the ins and outs of how the credit card industry works, the absolute nuances of the nitty gritties of it, the entire rails of how you build a reward program on it, for example. And I had in my past life built reward programs at Axis Bank's credit card. I'd done that for 2 years, and these guys know as much as I did back then. So it's amazing, and they've been doing their job for like 6 to 1 year. So I think companies like this have been helping their CSM teams also upskill and understand the product in depth. So that's definitely one area that I would love for people to start looking at. It's not that daunting. Honestly, being a CSM is not that daunting. हाँ ठीक है, शायद दिन में एक दो गाली कस्टमर से खाना पड़ेगा, but that's okay. I mean, you think product managers don't get yelled at for not delivering on time? That happens to them too. You think data people don't get yelled at when they do a shit job of their analysis? I mean, it happens everywhere. Every job kind of has its own challenges and its bad days and ugly days. So I don't think that should be something that kind of holds people back from at least exploring that arena. So that's again another good entry point for most people from the outside who are looking to build a fintech career. And it's the best learning ground that you will ever get. I know when I joined Axis Bank back in 2017, I did not understand outside of the bare basics of how to use a credit card. I didn't understand much of it at all. But today, if you come up to me and tell me about, interchange fees and that, or the network fees and how do you optimize for all of this, I will probably be able to help you out in that. Simply because of the 3 years of exposure that I had on building all of these products over there. And it teaches you a lot on innovating at scale for a massive number of people, because financial penetration in India is still pretty low. So you want to be able to reach like a billion customers. That is one. So you're innovating and delivering products at a scale. You're also making sure that you are drawing as creatively as possible, but within the boundary conditions that the regulators are set in. And I know that a lot of people keep talking about out of the box thinking and all of that, but I think you need to be a lot more creative when you have to draw within the box. And that's a life skill that honestly, you get to learn within the fintech space only. I don't think any other space, probably telecom also, considering how regulated they are, but most other spaces you're not going to be able to build that creative muscle memory for yourself. So I just want to start off with, these two things, which is that, it's not that hard if you don't have a technical or a financial background. CSM is one place. And the one skill that probably most of us need to build is to be able to draw within the box and draw as well as we can within the box. And know that that's a boundary condition set for you for a specific purpose, and then start building upon that. Um, so that's about the monologue that I had for you guys. If any of you have any questions, any specific questions, do feel free to come up on stage. Yes, Surya Karan, just pulling you up on stage. Hi, Surya, how are you doing? Thank you so much for joining me. Yes, Surya, why don't you give us a brief introduction about yourself and then we'll get straight to your question. Is Surya still audible to everyone else or is it just me? Are you saying something, Surya? I am not able to hear Surya. Are the others able to hear him? Okay, we will circle right back to you, Surya. Meanwhile, we're joined on stage with Siddharth over here. Hi, Siddharth. How are you doing? Siddharth, you may have to give mic permissions if you're joining in from your mobile. Am I doing something wrong in not letting others speak? Yes. Hi, Siddharth. How are you doing? I'm good, Siddharth. I'm doing great. Siddharth, we would love to know a little bit more about you. So why don't you introduce yourself? Awesome. Wow. Huh. This is a very
And then
interesting pivot, huh, that you've made from teaching geology all the way to teaching to moving into the mutual fund space. But I would love to know more about how you made that journey.
yeah, so I since one of my friend was giving this exam called CFA,
Okay.
I tried to learn more about it, and then I found out that it is quite globally recognized. Then I thought that if I do this exam, people would take me seriously, and I would get a small role where I can seriously begin my career in finance. So I attempted my CFA. I cleared level one, and then I thought I can get into finance. But still, there was a lot of friction uh, to get a start in a core finance role. I was interested into product research or investment research,
Hmm.
but there was a lot of friction. One because of my background, and also because of my age. And so that's what I started. I thought that let me start from the consumer end,
Huh?
and I started from the sales end.
Okay.
I joined a company and was selling mutual funds.
Okay.
Yeah, still working my
You
way up.
mentioned age. If you don't mind me asking, why was that a barrier for you, Siddharth?
Which barrier?
You mentioned that age was also a barrier for you when you were looking to pivot into the financial services space, but why was that a barrier?
Uh, it was mentioned to me by a few uh, HRs that generally, I think consultants mainly, that
Okay.
investment research you have to get in very early, and we like young people. So
Wow. Wow, there is an ageism then. Wow. I was not aware of that. And that's very unfortunate that you had to face that. So then you mentioned that you went into the sales side. So on the sales side, what exactly were you doing?
um, in the mutual fund.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, yes. Am I still audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I was selling. I was a relationship manager
Ah,
for ultra HNI clients, where we used to handle client portfolios, cross sell and upsell them mutual fund products, maybe sometimes PMS, AIFs also.
wow. Okay. So you've got
So
a good
servicing them.
exposure across
Yeah.
different product types, right?
Your voice is breaking, Kamalika.
Oh, is that for everyone else too? Is everyone else able to hear me well enough?
Now it's okay.
Yeah? Okay. So this is
Yeah.
exactly what I was mentioning, right? A lot of the times when we come from the outside, the easiest way for us to step in is with a CSM role, and that's what you kind of did with your relationship manager role. And then you get like a
Right.
very broad understanding and a very so you have both the breadth and the depth of knowledge when it comes to the financial products that you're selling to your HNI, because you are dealing with HNI customers. You have to always be right, otherwise you're going to get into like a lot of trouble with regulations and of course with your company as well. So you've been able to build that acumen simply by servicing your customers, and I think that's one thing that I keep telling people, that there isn't any one job that in fintech that is better than the other. I think for every job profile that we have, the amount of curiosity that you have to have, the amount of detailed understanding that you have to have on financial product is immense. So, and you've demonstrated exactly that, Siddharth. So, thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Also, one insight that I had in my small experience is I understood the role of sales, how important the uh, sales side is in the whole, in this financial spectrum that we
Yeah.
say. Sales is very important because I think finance is the only industry where the product is intangible. You cannot
Yeah,
touch or feel the product. Still, you
absolutely.
have to sell it to the consumer.
Absolutely.
So it makes a lot of difference how the product is pitched and how your relationships are. So that was a very important insight that I developed early in my career.
Oh, yes.
While teaching, I did not know that sales had such an important part in this life cycle of any financial product or any company, maybe.
Absolutely. In fact, if you see, one of the most celebrated fintech founders in India, Kunal Shah, happens to come from a psychology and design background, right? So he understands human psychology very well. You have to be able to understand human psychology well enough to be able to, I don't know how to put this, but yes, to build that trust with your user group so that they buy into your product eyes closed. So thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, sales is definitely something all of us. I think when it comes to financial services, yes, it's a lot more. It's used across the entire umbrella, but in every other sphere also, I think the sales acumen is something that's very underrated. It's very, very underrated a skill. But thank you so much for sharing that experience of yours, Siddharth. And now we shall move on and welcome our next speaker, Pavitro Martha. Hi, Pavitro. How are you doing?
Hi everyone. Hi Kamalika. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So, Pavitro, we would
Yeah.
love to know a little bit about you. So, why don't you introduce yourself?
So I have been working as a consultant with public sector programs, tech consultant with public sector programs like direct benefit transfers, mostly with many government departments.
Hmm.
So I want to understand how does this banking correspondent and scene is going to evolve since most of the things are being able to being done with this technology. How
Hmm.
is this banking correspondent sector is going to evolve in coming days? Because to withdrawing money and everything which the BC network used to do, now
Yes.
most of the things are online. So how is that going to develop, and what will be their necessities in what will be their like will they will be required in future time or not?
So this is a great question, and I'll tell you why. I have one very exemplary case study to share of how the entire role of the bank correspondent, by the way, is like an outsourced feet on street for a lot of banks to help service customers or even non-customers, but from very remote areas where a bank does not have their branches. So the case study that I would love to share off is about how these BC network are being upskilled with the latest technology to help serve the same consumer target segment that is there, the underserved, financially underserved segment that live in the hinterland of India. And this was something that I'm very proud of to have been a part of during our account aggregator journey. So Axis Bank calls their bank correspondents, by the way, bank mitras. And what they had done is, so one of the challenges that Axis Bank figured out with the customers of the bank mitra were facing was that they would probably have like a son or someone who stays in the city who sends money to them every month or every week or whatever the frequency was, and they would deposit the money with another party, either the kirana store or something like that, and it would take another 2 days for it to reflect in their bank account statements. But the bank mitra is obviously not going to come back 2 days later and say कि हाँ हाँ आपके बैंक में पैसे आ गए है ना. So the way that they solved for this was to, every time the bank mitra came to their village, the village mukhia who was there would have a tablet, and on that tablet the bank mitra would then enable account aggregator, the Axis Bank's account aggregator app that was there, and show them what were the last debits and credits that had happened on their account statement. Now, they did a lot of trainings for their mukhyas. Initially, I think for the first 6 months, when this demo first went live to the world, it would be the bank mitra who would go there every 3 days and show it to them. But eventually, even the mukhyas in the villages had become adept enough to figure out how to go about getting or fetching people's data and show it to them in real time to show if their money had been credited to them or not. So that was like a beautiful example of how bank correspondents were being upskilled over there. Now, I don't think the role of bank correspondent is going to go away at all in the near future, at least. The reason being because there are still huge pockets within India where technology has not yet made its reach. So till we have like, a smartphone in every household in India, I think the bank correspondent is definitely going to be a big, big bridge between financial products that are there and delivering it to these people at the bottom of the pyramid. Pavitra, was I able to answer your question?
Yes. Yeah, matlab, that is what like the I like my thing was that ki this underserved and underserved people are would be very matlab, expectation is that they will be rapidly uh, decreasing because of the technology. But as you said, until and unless everyone has mobile phone along with adequate financial literacy, they would be required.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for adding
Thank
that.
you.
All right, so we have Ankit Mishra with us. Hi, Ankit, how are you doing? Anupam will
Hi,
come to
Kamalika,
you
can
in
you hear
just
me?
a minute. But yes, Ankit, please, over to you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
It'll be great if Anupam could speak first. I'm just I'm away from keyboard for a minute, so
Awesome.
could we take Anupam's question
Sure,
first?
sure. Why not? Anupam, hi, welcome. How are you doing?
Hey, Kamalika, I'm doing well, thank you, and I hope you're doing well as well.
I'm doing
So,
great. Thank you so much for asking.
yeah, my question is, we are in a world right now where, uh, you talked about a fintech, we are talking about CBDC a lot, crypto, and you know, we are dealing with lot of stuff right now. So the biggest challenge that I see right now is being on privacy point of view, uh, that is security point of view as well. So how you are, yeah, since you mentioned you are working into the product companies, most of the fintech stuff and all. How do you see a challenge in terms of the privacy point of view? Definitely, Indian government already passed a law for DPDPA, the stuff, something like that, and fintech companies, are being the primary point of view,
Hmm.
just looking into it. So, how do you see, this is a challenge to comply within a law, from Indian perspective? Actually, uh, that's what I'm just placing it. Hope my question has been a bit clear.
Absolutely. And I think this is one place where I feel India has been lagging behind the curve when it comes to building in very strong data protection rails. Even now, if you see, it's digital privacy and data protection. So it's all about your digital footprint, by the way. The fine prints of the law is a little nuanced that way. But, anyways, that aside, I think we're still on the right track. And one thing that I think every fintech player should be very well aware of is that you are handling other people's money, which means for you to find a good product market fit, they have to be able to trust you. And if they figure out that you're misusing their data, you're not really being cognizant or taking care of their privacy, you're not going to ever win that. You may have like a short term win where you suddenly are able to scale because you're giving X number of cash back, but you will never really be able to find product market fit. And that's something that the good fintechs that I have had the opportunity to work with and partner with, they're already very cognizant of that and they take all of this very, very seriously. Like, for example, even at Lakshmi, we wanted to build out the entire the spend analysis part of it, and everyone that we spoke to that was doing spend analysis was reading and scraping data from SMSs. Even the likes of Cred was doing that. But we were like, you know what, does not matter. We're not going to do it. We don't feel comfortable. We don't feel confident about, our data being scraped and read. Why will we want to do that to someone else? I know it will be like a great tool for women if they know how, like, if we give them pointed advice on how to budget. But till we can actually have a way in which we tell them that this is secure, your whatever data you give us, you give it to us and then we play with it. We're never going to cross that boundary. I think that's one thing that a lot of good fintechs also that I know are doing this, and they very much believe that consumers data is their data. It's not ours to kind of play around or upsell and stuff like that. But is that something that everyone does? Not yet. But I think the way that the regulators have been kind of hammering down on a lot of fintechs, I think in the near future, we will see a lot of them towing the line. Did that answer your question, Anupam?
I'll say, it is, but yeah, at the same side, when we see as an holistic view in an organization, you cover those all stuff, and I would say next 1 year, we will see these consent stuff and all, more and more in the fintech space,
So
and
it's consent is one part of it. One of the things that we were very much focused on as a community when I was building out account aggregator was
Mhm.
how do we make it very simple for the user to understand what is it that they're consenting to. And on the
That's
other
actually
side, if the user feels a little unconfident about how their data is being used, how do we also make that journey of them revoking their consent equally seamless? So I think this is something a lot of us fintech builders have been focusing a lot on. Let's hope for a positive change 5 years down the line, Anupam.
Yeah, I think the other part of it, the transparency, which comes within a consent and the stuff like that. This is the most of the part of the world is been working into it. Like GDPR or CDP, CCPA or COPA, HIPAA. The multiple different compliances that's
Yes.
been working with it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, it's nice talking to you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for adding that, Anupam.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, we shall now move on to Ankit Mishra. I hope you're back on your keyboard. Ankit?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
So I was just going through your profile. Let me be the first to congratulate you on 70,000 followers on LinkedIn. And we've been reading your post for so long that it's essentially great to hear from you. And I hope that you'll be conducting more events. So on that, I wanted to ask you two questions. One is that how are you recording this event and where we could access this? This is
I'm
the first
trying
one.
to figure out
And
the recording. Honestly, it's still I'm not sure how good the quality is gonna be, but I am doing it by live casting it on Wave Studio. I don't know how good the recording is gonna be, but if it is a good quality recording, I will definitely upload it and share the link out, Ankit.
yeah, but I think you should
So much
upload
for
it anyway
that.
because it's great to hear from you. And the second is that what's out there other than lending? Because
Ah,
most fintechs have a moat based on just lending. So I would like to understand where's the money coming in from other than lending. What are the opportunities? Like one opportunity I could think of was older people have very low trust in UPI.
hmm.
So I feel like an app that would essentially cater to. So I would love to understand the work that you're doing and also understand what's out there other than lending.
So that's a great question, and I think why every fintech is now suddenly focusing on lending is because, well, you do get a lot of money when you lend out to the underserved customers or the unserved customers, right? Every bank, every NBFC wants to lend to this segment. So basically, they're called the thin credit or the new to credit customer segments. Every bank wants to lend to them, but they're so risk averse and they don't really know how to use or make good use of alternate data to figure out how to underwrite them, that they typically don't do that. Also, for most banks, the amount of organic traffic that they get on loans is, it's like you guys would have seen, right? Like there was a point in time where PSU banks had given out so many loans that they didn't have enough deposits at the back end to support it, and they went on these deposit walks and deposit drives all through and giving crazy rates of interest last year. I hope some of you capitalized on that, by the way. But where is the money come? So that's one of the reasons why I think most people get into lending. It's easy. Uh, Fintechs collect so many data points on your app. And this goes back to the earlier conversation that Anupam and I were having about data privacy. Like, you won't believe it. One of the fintech I spoke to, they actually said that there's a very strong correlation with the willingness to repay for customers who set an alarm before 6 o'clock, 6 a.m., versus those who don't have that sort of an alarm. Like, that's the amount of granular data that these guys have. Imagine if you've
But
downloaded
that's
a
super
fintech
insightful.
app.
That's super insightful.
It's
Yeah.
actually very scary. I panicked for a bit, but anyways, but yeah. So fintech apps, they are. It's changing now with the DPDP, but till date, most apps collected any and every piece of information that they deemed could possibly be used sometime in the future. They don't know if they need it today, but they'll just collect that information and then they'll build their data models to figure things out and do like a retrospective build of their data models. Uh, and that was something most banks do not do, by the way. Most of your banking apps, if you go through the permissions you've given them, they're very straightforward permissions. They're not trying to see what other apps you have installed. So, also, by the way, one more insight that this same fintech company had given me was that this was when PUBG was still allowed in India, by the way. So, people who have PUBG installed on their phone, their default rates are higher. Like, that's how granular these guys got into all of these, the kind of information that they collected. and they could just do like a retrospective data model, sell that good customer base to banks, and pick up a good commission over there. This was like a build once and earn forever sort of a model for them. So that's why I think lending became like a huge thing. But today, if you see, people are realizing that okay, so it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? All of us have that same pyramid when it comes to anything financial services. The first part is, where do you store your money, where do you hold your money? So there, the government did a very good job with Jandhan and Aadhaar integration and all of that. So that part kind of got solved. The next thing was, how are you doing your transactions? UPI came into play over there. Now UPI does not make any money, as most of us know. There's zero MDR there. The only person who makes money in UPI is NPCI, but that's besides the point. Jokes aside, after you have the entire transaction piece sorted, is where you need to start budgeting and saving and investing and securing yourself. People are realizing that this is also a place that is, it's down, it's of course on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's kind of above. So you don't have that many consumer bases over here, but these are customers who are willing to take charge of their finances. So gradually, if you see, people are moving up the pyramid over there, till when, at the apex of it, I think it's a lot to do about getting those small ticket business loans for a lot of, we are seeing a lot of, by the way, creatorpreneurs coming up, who are like probably a one person company. Most banks don't want to lend to them, but they have a good revenue stream, and they're getting into a lot of these direct to consumer, sort of building direct to consumer products and all of that. So if they get that leverage, it will be great for them and stuff like that. So people are realizing that yes, as we start gradually moving up the ladder, there are going to be other avenues where we learn a much bigger ticket. So for example, at the top again, we have this entire forex remittances that's there, cross border payments, where again the margins are super high. There's crazy friction in the system. So that's again another area that fintechs can. But it's all about a game of volume versus value. Now, if you are a fintech that's lower in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I'm calling it financial hierarchy of needs. I don't have a name for it. But if you are at the bottom of it, then it makes a lot more sense for you to just do lending, which is what most fintechs are in. Did I ramble for too long, Ankit? Ankit, does that answer you? All right. We'll circle back to Ankit, but I would love to welcome on stage a very, very good friend of mine and an old colleague who I have not spoken to in a very long time, and I'm guilty of that. Hi, Subin, how are you doing? By the way, Subin and I used to sit across the desk to each other when I was working at CAMS. And it's so great to see you here. But Subin, if you can unmic yourself, I would love to hear from you. And I'm sure that others would also love to get to know a little bit about you. Over to you, Subin.
Yeah. Hi, Kamalika. This is the first time I'm using this feature in LinkedIn, so I didn't know to unmute. Yeah. So how are you?
I am doing
It's great.
fabulous.
It's great listening to you, right? After a long time.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. So much insights you had on. We all did was this time pass, right? Yeah. Okay. So a specific question. Um, so now that you have moved to be a product leader,
Hmm.
how are you ensuring that your uh, reportees are getting trained the right way? But getting trained the right way is like a guy new to the industry.
Hmm.
He has a lot of thing in finance, right, to do or to take up, and every app end up doing everything, most of them, right? So, I thought this the topic was building a fintech career. So, yeah. So, can you just like few tips like how you are doing it for your peer for your reportees, so that
That's a very, very deep question. But thank you, Subin. I'm just so glad that you did ask this, and I've always enjoyed having these, deep conversations with you. So I will try taking a stab at it. For me, I think
yeah,
at Lakshmi, there are broadly two things that we need to really focus on. One is to understand the community sentiment. When women inherently have like a very different relationship when it comes to anything money. So one, you need to be able to understand that. So spend as much time with, like, just for example, uh, a lot of people in our community kept saying that we want a savings account, we want to save, we want an account, we want an account. But eventually we did figure out after a lot of conversations with them, what they want is a seamless ability to transact, and transact in a way that, you know, their husbands or their fathers don't always come and ask them, Arey, where did you spend that 100 rupees that I gave you, and stuff like that. So instead of building out an entire neo-banking savings app like what a lot of other fintechs have done, the easiest way for us was to simply launch a co-branded PPI card. You're able to transact also, and you're able to, your need is basically met. Now, but for someone who's new to the industry, how do they figure out that such a solution even exists in the first place? I think this is where you have to be someone who's super curious and has like a crazy superpower of Googling very well. You know, this is going to sound very lame, but if you just research about, you know, best ways, payment ways that don't need like a full KYC document or something like that, you will get like 50 dozen places that tell you what all products are there, and then you'll figure out ki, haan, theek hai, there is PPI cards. So I think that is, and then of course you have to go back to the regulators and figure out what is possible, what is not possible, which is like the last leg, which anyways, you know, you'll probably have seniors in your organization to tell you the best practices of going about doing this. But yes, I think the two things that are very important is that you have a good sense of the community. And this, if you remember, Subin, we were having this entire discussion on product sense.
Hmm.
I think that's
Hmm.
exactly what it is, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's
So
really
basically, you
about
need
having
to,
the
yeah,
customers.
you just,
Yeah. So
but
I'm good.
how, yeah, yeah, but how does and a guy who's just coming and seeing this, like he's just started, um, so basically you're saying this guy needs to grunt his way,
He needs to talk to at least
right?
10 customers a
He
week.
needs to,
Yeah.
got it,
Yeah.
yeah,
And not just talk
makes sense.
like as in a check mark sort of a talk. You have that deep, insightful conversation, the way that, you know, you and I used to have in the car. But yeah,
Hmm.
you need to have those sort of very deep conversations with your consumers. And then don't
Hmm.
let that, don't drop that ball, but go back and immediately start Googling. I think Google is a
Uh,
superpower.
but tell me, in this fintech community, is it like really open? Where can we find these folks whom we can talk to, etc.?
So one thing I keep telling a lot of people is that if you have an app, the best set of customers or the best set of people you can talk to are the customers who've left a very ugly review on your app store. They've probably tried your app, gotten so frustrated and annoyed with your app that they went onto the App Store and Play Store and left you a review. So those tinker pinkers are the ones that I would first pick. And then you can gradually, of course, there are lots of communities also. Nowadays, technology has become so easy that you have like a bunch of these WhatsApp communities, you have a lot of these Facebook and Instagram communities also, where you can get these kind of insights or feedback.
Yeah, awesome, Kamalika. Yeah, thanks for those very tiny bits of insights. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Subin, and I shall definitely call you back. I am so sorry we've not spoken since December, but with that, I think it's been a great hour with all of you over here. And unfortunately, Sagar, we will be closing the session. However, what I am doing is dropping you a quick message so you can put in your query to me, and would love to circle back to you later on. But that's it for this session. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I do plan to make this a lot more regular. I know I've not done this in the last 1 year, but yes, I do plan to do this at least once a week. So I'm glad you guys liked it, and any feedback that you all have, please feel free to leave that to me. You can either drop a comment or you can also DM me. I will definitely respond back to all of you. With that, have a great rest of the evening, everyone. Thank you once again for joining me. Bye bye.